In the Spanish-speaking world, there's plenty of information and podcasters that have explained in every single possible way, with facts, all the heresies, with legal terms, everything that went wrong in the conclave of 2013, but not in the English-speaking world. Although there's many podcasters that I know, especially the traditional ones, I know and I can figure they suspect or they have the information. I don't see, or I haven't seen, maybe I missed it, but I do follow them and I respect them. I don't see they have truly spoke out and tell the truth as a fact of why the conclave of 2013 is null. There's many reasons, many legal reasons, but I'm going to just mention a few, and that should be more than enough to open a case of investigation in the tribunals. Is it happening maybe in the Vatican in these weeks? Anyway, here I am, a Spanish with a strong accent, speaking poor English, but doing her best to explain why the conclave of 2013 was annulled, and that makes him, Francisco, an anti-pope. There's been 40 anti-popes in the Catholic Church, not all of them heretics. Anti-pope simply means that you are an unlawful pope, which means you're seated in the seat of St. Peter unlawfully, because circumstances were given like that, with dolo or without dolo. Now, that doesn't make you automatically a heretic pope. It so happens that on top of that, Bergoglio was heretic over more than 1 million times. But that's a different topic that we are not going to cover today. We are going to cover the legal facts that make the conclave of 2013 null. First one, on February 10th, 2013, after years of oppression, infiltration of Masonic cardinals in the church to arrive to the throne of Peter. This is nothing we're going to talk here. Buy and purchase the book of Dr. Taylor Marshall, Infiltration. It is true what he says there. It is true. I can tell that. It is true. So, with that basis there, you can read it there. After years of suppression, oppression, he decides to do a declaratio. No renunciato, declaratio, which means announcement. No renunciation, no resignation. He makes an announcement. The title of his communicate is Announcement, Declaratio. He writes this on the 10th of February, and he makes it public to the consistorial meeting of cardinals. It's a regular consistorial meeting about different sainthoods that they need to approach. It's not special. It's not like, hey guys, I need to tell you something incredibly important, extraordinary consistorial meeting. No. So, it's just an announcement. Okay? In this announcement, written in Latin, poor Latin, strangely, because he is one of the most incredible Latinists of the 20th and 21st century, so much that he will speak Latin like I'm speaking English, even better right now. When he arrived to his office to Rome for the first time, and he barely spoke Italian and nobody spoke German. His language like this, like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, this is the order of the day, in Latin. That's the level of Latin he had. Well, anyway, he wrote the declaratio, which said, I'm going to say it in very simple words, but I promise to you, it's not complicated. It is written in that original document in Latin that we do have, the original one, not the one that they modify later and then made public with modifications accordingly to what they intended the message to be, changing the narrative. The original that was communicated in that day to the consistorial meeting, to the cardinals. It says, basically, I am going to announce today that on February 28th at 8 o'clock, 20 hours, 8 p.m., I'm going to be moving, not leaving the place of the papacy, but moving physically to another place, which was later Castel Gandolfo, which is still the official summer residence of the papacy, to work only on the munus. You see, papacy has two types, let's say, responsibilities or functions. Munus and ministerium. The munus is what a pope makes a pope. What makes a pope, which is the gift. There's no ordination for becoming a pope. You need to be ordained to become a deacon, to become a presbyter, to become a bishop. But then you don't need to be ordained to become a pope. You are selected in an appropriate and lawfully conclave by appropriately and lawfully cardinals, which is always very questionable. And then you need to accept, and that's a gift. And then the Holy Spirit acts upon you, as long as everything is lawful, right? Anyway. So he said on February 28th, I'm too old. I feel this work and all this, basically this I say, all these, snakes that are around me, they're becoming wild. So I need the strength, and I don't have the strength to do the practicalities and functions, practicals of everyday administratives, which is the ministerium, which the day I leave the physical place here and I move to a more peaceful place that is still the seat of St. Peter and is another official house of the Vatican, that is Castel Gandolfo. I'm going to be there dedicated to my munus, praying, and in sacrifice next to the cross. Those are the words that he uses. And I'll ask you that day to arrange to choose someone to do the ministerium, which is the practicalities. Okay? There's no misunderstanding. There's no... Whatever they say, they're going to try to prove their point, but I promise there's not point. This was not a renunciation to the munus, which is required to renounce the papacy. And this is in the canon 332.2, the code of the Catholic Church, the canonic law. There was not renunciation. There was not to the munus. There was not. He said, I'm the munus, I keep the munus, I'm going to execute this munus outside the city of Rome, but keep going, choose someone to do the ministerium. That was all. Because of the infiltration of Masonic cardinals, that again, in Infiltration, the book of Dr. Taylor Marshall is very well explained. Read that book and then you come back to this. These cardinals were waiting for the moment to jump in and use all the press and all the insiders that they had to create the narrative they wanted to make believe and jump in the renunciation and finally of the renunciation of the Pope Benedict, and finally have the excuse to put the candidate they had been pushing for decades, that was Bergoglio, finally to put it in the place of the papacy. So what do? Cardinal Sodano, March 1st, 2013, declares sede vacante. When was no sede vacante, there was a pope. Francisco was not in the plane yet, but who was the pope still with the munus was Benedict. It was no sede vacante. Sede vacante is if the pope has died or specifically, expressly renounced to the munus, accordingly to the law, canon 332.2. Was not the case. Still, he declares sede vacante, annul, but let's give it to him, all right? Goes ahead. And only that, he says, and I declare that the conclave needs to start, so I call all the cardinals, electoral cardinals, the ones that can vote, to be in Rome to start the conclave on March 12th. That is 11 days after the declaration of sede vacante that took place March the 1st. So March the 12th arrived the cardinals to make it. That's another reason for annulment of the conclave, for an unlawful conclave. Why? Because accordingly, there's a law that regulates the conclave, basically, and everything that takes place, the votes and everything in the conclave. This law was created knowing the situation of his cardinals by John Paul II in 1996, and it's called Universi Dominici Gregis. Okay. Coincidentally, Benedict XVI, before the 28th of February, when he flew to Castel Gandolfo to live there and practice his munus, as he said, which is the papacy, but the religious spiritual papacy side of it, he made a change in the point on number 37 of that law, the Universi Dominici Gregis, that is the electoral conclave law for saying. And the point is, he said, the conclave needs to happen from the moment and the day you declare sede vacante, 15 days. And you can only add 5 days, which will make a total of 20 days from the moment on the day you declare sede vacante, if it's really needed for making sure all the cardinals, the electoral cardinals, can be there. That's it. So what happened? Wait a minute. So Cardinal Sodano declares sede vacante on the 1st of March, and he says, oh, and by the way, we're starting the conclave on March the 12th, 11 days. Annulment is not valid, the conclave anymore. Still, let's move on, let's do the conclave. That same law, in the points 68 and 69, regulates the votes, right? How to vote, and the rounds of votes, and the ballots, and everything. So it says, you can only do 4 rounds of vote a day. You need 2/3 of agreement of the votes to select the Pope, and the Pope needs to accept the position, right? The winner needs to accept the position. If you need on the same day, it doesn't matter if one of them was null, one of the rounds of elections of votes, the 4 times you can vote a day, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. It doesn't matter if one of them have to get cancelled or null. No, it counts like one, and you start all over the following day. Where is the rush? Where is the rush? We're in the Vatican, right? We're bureaucrats. We're just here deciding, voting. Okay, following day. Well, these cardinals, because they're anti-cardinals, some of them, they lack the virtue of patience and prudence. The greediness made them fall always. So what happened? On March 13, the second day of the conclave, 2013, in the 4th round of votes, which is the second of the evening, and that's it, there's no more. They do their round, and there were 150 cardinals that were voting present. Appeared 116 ballots, one of them in white. Where this ballot come from? No idea. Okay, and what is, let's cancel it. This is no. Good, lawfully, good, let's cancel it. What is the problem? They should have waited for the next day and start all over again their 4 rounds of votes. They didn't. The greediness was too powerful. Let's just finish this today. Even if it's unlawful, nobody will know. What happened? They did an unlawful round of votes. 5 unlawful, accordingly to the point 37. And there is where Bergoglio was selected unlawfully. And all of these reasons make him the anti-pope.